Hello and welcome to my channel once again. So in this video, I'll be creating this, which is fully responsive by the way, and it contains a little bit of JavaScript. So I got this design from a website called Frontendmentor.io. It's a great website for designs where you could challenge yourself. So if I should type in anything here and I click on enter, it tells me, oops, error, please provide a valid email. So when I say at email.com, boom, it goes away. So I'll be showing you how I achieved this design. So you can see the mobile view, very nice, and desktop view, boom, very nice. So we'll be using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Don't worry, I'll be leaving a link in the description where you could go to the website Frontendmentor and take up any challenges if you're interested and achieve them, then submit them. So now let's see the code. So now I actually have the designs opened up in Adobe XD. So you could see the mobile design here, then the desktop design, then the action design, which we'll be implementing using JavaScript. So whenever you take a challenge from Frontendmentor, you will actually be given the designs that will be used to achieve the project. So I've actually opened those designs on Adobe XD. So you also be given some images and SVG files, so on. Then you would also be given some style guide in order for you to achieve the design. So these are the style guides that I was given. So we have mobile should be this view, desktop should be this view, and so on. So let me quickly create a link to my CSS file. I'm just going to create a new file called style.cs. So now I'm just going to copy everything here and delete. Even this, delete. Now let's go to my XD file. So I'm going to be starting with the mobile first approach. So look at the mobile view first before we move on to the desktop view. So looking at this, we would want to start with the header. With this nav, or rather header. Don't start here. So now let's go back to our HTML. So let's see div header. Then I want an image whereby images /pg. Okay, it should be logo.svg. By the way, I'm using an extension called Live Server, so it enables me to not reload my browser every time I update my HTML file and my CSS file. So it's coming up. So this is my boring HTML file. So this is how it is by default. You've been given all the text, which are all this here. So now let's look at this. So what I'm actually going to be doing is I'm going to be switching from my HTML file to my CSS file. So now I've gotten this image, the class of header. Now let's move to the CSS file. So I want all this to be down. So the first thing I'm going to target is my universal selector. into say margin 0. So these are those things I like doing. I like removing the margin, the padding, and making the box sizing border box instead of content box. So this just remove any default stuff the browser has against my web page. So now I target the body selector because we're in CSS. So font family. So I want the font family to be JSON Vincent. So all this is based on the design, on the style guide which I had already been given. So I want the background attachment fixed. So now to target my header, giving it a padding of top 2 AM, left and right 3 AM. So now moving on to my HTML document. What else do we have? Now we have this big image. Now we want this image. So now what do? So I want the image to be together with all this content. So I'll wrap everything up with a main. Then so I'll call this header image. So in my header image, I want the actual image. So I give the width of 100%. So when I drag it, you see it is responsive. So when you use percentage, it actually makes images responsive. So what next? We've gotten our image. So now we want this text. We want all of this, everything like this. We also want them to be in a container. Let them have their own like container. So simply what I'll do, I'm going to wrap everything like this. Ctrl+Shift+P, enter. Then we're going to give them a div. Then say main content. So main content. Now looking at the design, so I want this "we are coming soon" to actually be like this. So that is what we'll be focusing on now. So I'm going to wrap all of this with div, with the class text, and this we need to wrap it with a span. So span the class of thin block. So thin. So this also I'm going to wrap it with a span, then a class of block. And also the last one, so span then block. So here also want this to be block. So moving on to the CSS, where you see why I did it like this. So you should know that a span tag is actually an inline tag. So I want this where to be a block element, then comments to be a block element, then soon also to be a block element. So let's target the image class. So let's give it a width of 100%, then margin bottom of 4 AM, just because of this space here. So next, target the main content, which you should remember is the container housing everything. So 10%, I want 10% in 4 AM. So all I'm saying, okay, top 0, left, right, 10%. So no matter how I increase it, it's always 10%. Then bottom 4 a.m. That's what I want. Now moving on, we move to the main text. So target it like this, main text, that's a class. So text transform, I want uppercase. Okay, so the font size, I want them to be 3 a.m. So I'd already experiment with this. I know this is what we want to achieve, but it's just because of the width was small, that's why it was like that. So it would have been like this. So I'm just going to leave it at this size for now. So I'm going to say font width. The font width, I want it to be 600. So I want some space, letter spacing, let's say 10 pixels. Then I want my margin bottom to be 1 rem. Also, I want to give the color, the text color. Then moving on, I want to target the thing, which is the where. So the font size is going to change to 2.5 em. Actually, I want it to be smaller than the rest. So right now it's big. Oh, oops, it's supposed to be rem. Then the font family, sorry, the font width should be 300. Then the color, so as you can see, we're getting there. So target the main and block. The block is a class, so display block. So that does the trick, display block. So no matter how I increase it, everything is always going to be in a block form. So as you can see, it's pretty much like this now. So now we have to target the next one, which are the text that are below. So now we move on to our HTML page. So all of this should be wrapped in a container. See, I'm always wrapping everything in a container. So, well, this should be wrapped in a p tag because they are just, as you can see, their paragraph. So I'm going to give this a class text 2. So going to the CSS back, and let's style it. So we have the main, the text 2, which is a class. I don't know why I forget every time. It's a class. Color is meant to change, so I have hashtag CE, enter. Then I need some line height of 1.6. So voila. So increase this. So as you can see, the mobile view is coming to life. So what next? So we want to create this. So it's basically an input tag, an input element having a placeholder of email address. Then we have this button here. So now let's do that. Going back to my HTML page. So now we have to think, because in the desktop design, I actually want this to be, I need to click this to get this error. So I'm actually going to wrap this in a container. So div dot click, because I want it to be a click, and I'm also going to give it an ID of click. Don't worry, when we get to the JavaScript section, we'll be using that. So So now a form, so what am I writing? So form, then the inputs. So the text should be email, then place order. Let's copy this, paste it here, and there we go. So now I also need an ID for the JavaScript section. Don't worry, when we get there. And if you've not watched my video on where I talked about basis of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, please do watch that. So I'm going to give it a pattern. So this pattern is basically all the rules the email tag is supposed to follow. So I'm just going to copy and paste it from my previous code. So there are a lot of ways of doing this same thing. You could use JavaScript to include the pattern, but I chose to use the HTML directly. So I want a button, then I also want an image in my button. So you see that. So now moving to my style file. So I'm just going to target the main, then dot click. I'm going to give this position relative. Don't worry, you know why I give that position relative in a sec. So target the inputs. Then if you've never used this is an attribute selector where the inputs with this attribute sounds targets the email. So any input, assuming I had more than one input, I could just target, okay, this has a type of email and this has a type of text. So now that this is targeted, I want some padding in it. It's too close, so 1 em, 0, 1 em, and 2 em. Okay, that's so much better, but it still looks ugly. So the border radius, I want that to be 100 pixels. So some border 1 pixel solid, CE that. So want the background to be none, then the width should be 100%. Whoops. And also the font size should be 16 pixels. So I don't know. Okay, as you can see, it's not inheriting my font family. So I'm going to say font family Jason Vincent. Yes, now does that. So now I'm going to target the focus, because on Chrome, whenever the input field is on focus, it looks ugly. So I'm going to say main, then just going to copy all of this. I'm lazy to type paste, then the associate class of focus. So I'm just going to say the outline should be none. So now let's target the button. So main, click, and the button. So now I want to position absolute. So if you've not watched my video on how to position something center, you should watch that for you to understand what position absolute is. And don't worry, I'll leave the link in the description, and I will also refer you to other videos So I want the height to be 100%, and I also want it to move to the right 0. Okay, so the border radius should be 100%, 100 pixels. So now I want the border itself to be no border, please. Okay, I need to change the color. So the background should be a linear gradient of 135 degree. So now that's looking like the design, right? Yes, it is looking like the design. So I also want the, like, when I move my cursor to it, I want it to be like a link. So I say cursor pointer. Now when I move my cursor to it, you see the cursor changes to a pointer. Then I say box shadow. I want some box shadow there. So say 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 10 pixels, which is the blur, then the color. So I want, when we over to the button, I want the opacity to be dropped, and just copy this. To be 0.9. So when I move this close, it becomes lighter. The box, just going to copy all this. Don't mind me, I'm so lazy to type. And change this to 5 pixels, then the blur to 20 pixels, so it comes out small. Okay, now that that's done, we move on back to the HTML page. So basically, we've completed the design. Everything is completed. So now I actually want this place provide a valid email also to be there. So I'm just going to put a p tag, giving it a class of on show, then an ID of show, just because of the JavaScript section. Oh my god, what's wrong with me? Email, right? So that should probably be smaller than. So going back to my CSS file, so let me target. So now I don't want this featured class to be like that, so I'm going to say main, and you call the featured elements of the placeholder. Oh, I actually said featured class. It's actually a featured element. The placeholder. So I want the font family to also be JSON Fin Sans, and I want the color also to change to this, right? So that's all that, and the main, then on show, which was the class name I gave to it. So I want margin 10 pixels, 0, 30 pixels. So top, right, bottom, left. So the color and the font size should be 14 pixels. I actually want that smaller. So there we go. We've created the mobile view. Let's see it full screen. Okay, full screen, it looks terrible. Don't worry, we'll be fixing that. very soon. If you've watched so far, thanks for watching. So in part 2, we'll be looking at the desktop approach, and that will be all. So see you in the next video. Thanks for watching once again. Bye bye.